Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidwaram. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharyaya. Krishna Chittasthitha Radha, Radha Chittasthito Harihi. Samsara Sagare Nityam, Radha Krishna Parangatihi. Krishna says, I am birthless and deathless, and though I am indeed the Supreme Lord of all, though I am Ishvara, I manifest here on earth. How? With Maya under my control, with Prakriti under my control. You may call Prakriti whatever, as nature, as energy, as matter. I prefer to translate the word Prakriti as Shakti. When there is somebody creating something, it follows logically that he creates with an energy. You can't even get up and make tea if you're feeling listless. So energy is vital to any creation. And Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter again, he says, Janma karma chame divyam. My birth is divine. My deeds are divine. And so when he came down to play the human drama on the earth, he brought his whole toli along. Paltan leke aaya ho, akhele nahi aaye. And among his paltan was his Pancha Prakriti. We are familiar with the first 3 aspects of his Prakriti, and we don't much know about the latter 2. The first aspect of his Prakriti is Durga, who is fiery. The second aspect of his Prakriti is Lakshmi, who is flashy. Wherever there is wealth, there is grandeur, there's opulence, there's extravagance. The third aspect of his Prakriti is the cognitive and the creative aspect, Saraswati. Saraswati blesses us with knowledge, the cognitive aspect I said, with knowledge, with creativity, with kala, with medha. When we acquire knowledge, we must retain it. Otherwise, how will we recall it? With medha Shakti to retain it, and Vani to transfer it, to transform, to communicate. The 4th aspect I said, which is not so well known as his Prakriti, is Gayatri. Gayatri expresses as Brahma Tejas, especially in Brahmins. I have to say this because traditionally it was only the Brahmins who would chant the Gayatri mantra. And the 5th aspect of his Prakriti is Radhika, who is also his Raseshwari, his Praneshwari, and his Ahladini Shakti. And in the 12th chapter, the Lord explains why he takes a human form. He very compassionately, lovingly tells Arjuna, he says, why Saguna Bhakti, Saguna Aaradhana is so important. He says, Klesho dikhatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta higatir dhukkam dehavat biravabhyate. He says, Arjuna, you and I have a body. So we have to begin with that standpoint. You will be able to identify with Lord if he also has a name, a body, a form, Leela, etc., etc. And so the feminine aspect of this Purusha was Radhika, who is Radha and from where did she come? Radha was born, but not the normal way, to her parents, Vrishabhanu and Kirti Devi. She was born in this place called Raval in current Uttar Pradesh. And it is said that one morning after a bath, when Vrishabhanu went into his garden to pluck flowers, he saw a very heavenly lotus. Heavenly, magical, because it was very huge compared to the normal ones. And in it was a gleaming, golden, moon-like baby. He found it irresistible to just leave her there. She's called as Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi. She is of this gold complexion, gleaming like gold. So he says, I have to protect her, I have to take her, I have to own her. And this is how he brought her home. And she was the most beautiful, attractive little girl who was a delight to everyone around, except that she wouldn't open her eyes. And her parents thought that she was blind. Vrishabhanu and Kirti, they didn't dote upon her any less for that, but they thought she was blind. And when she turned 8 years old, it is said that Vrishabhanu, along with his wife Kirti Devi and Radha, went to Gokul to meet Nanda Baba, because, the baby had just arrived in his palace. And there, when Vrishabhanu was exchanging courtesies with Nanda Baba on the aside, without anybody seeing it, Radha sighted this baby and she opened her eyes. So it took her all of 8 years to open her eyes, because she first wanted to spot him on earth. And he responded with a wink more attractive than the smiley wink in your WhatsApp. And this proves that the relationship between Radha and Krishna was very organic, was very, very natural, and it was not earthly. I can't delineate all the happenings, but I will give you some happenings which mark milestones in their life. And so it was instant attraction. And though Radha was 8 years older than him, the ball was always in Krishna's court. And she always yielded. One very touching aspect of Radha is that she is very soft, out and in. She is Mridu Bhashini. She cannot, I've never read an episode where Radha has outbursts of anger. Even with Krishna, she put him in his place in subtle ways, but never in loud, volatile ways. Anyway, so as they grew, they became very, very fond of each other. Krishna would do many things to test her, to test her surrender to him. And she never grudged that or judged it. Like, he would suddenly remove his clothes and say, now bathe me in this water. Now, it's very embarrassing for a girl who's 8 or something to do that, but she would do it just to please him. And like that, one day, it is said, he took her to a very pristine place, a very original spot that was not visited by anybody, not any insect, not cattle, not nature, not anybody. And then he was showing her around, and she marveled at the beauty and bounty of nature. And then as they were walking along, Krishna says, this is very boring, that we are seeing it like this. Let us play a game. I will become a deer and you become a peacock. And we'll play this game of hide and seek and you spot me. I will hide and you will find me. So Radha agreed. And as a peacock cannot fly very high, She searched for him high and low, in and out, near and far, near the pond, behind the boulder, in the thicket amidst the trees, on the knolls. Nowhere could she find him. And then, in sheer exhaustion, she collapses. The peacock collapses on a carpet of grass. Now, the deer is just seeing all the while, is so typical of him, this naughty fellow. He's spotting how she's searching for me. But the minute he sees her very sad, tired, disappointed of not having found him, he emerges just next to her. And then she gets up in glee, the peacock, and says, I'm saying he, but it was a peacock, it was a peacock, and says, I got you, I found you, I won the game. And she says, where is my reward? So Krishna says, your reward I will give you, but I'll give you in a way that the world knows. And out of deep, in utter ecstasy, on by itself, a few peacock plumes drop from her body. Krishna gathers them in a band and places it on his head. And he says, I'm placing this peacock feathers, these plumes on my head, just to show that you have won the game, that you occupy the topmost place in my life, that I love you more than I love myself, and also that you're as graceful and beautiful as a peacock. And this was all in Gokul and Mathura and Barsana, where Radha lived. And when she attained maidenhood, when she came of age, remember there's an 8-year gap between Radha and Krishna. Okay, I also forgot to say that she was born I don't know how to put it here, but she was born, her birthday occurs in Vrindavan exactly 15 days after Krishna's birth. The next Ashtami, we celebrate one Ashtami, and the next Ashtami is her birth. They call it Radhashtami. In the calendar, sometimes it's printed as Durgashtami. Okay? And she's born under Anuradha Nakshatra. It is believed that Krishna is born on a Wednesday and she on a Friday, because she's Shakti after all. And so when they moved to Vrindavan, Radha, not by force, but by her fervor, she established herself as the foremost gopi. I'll here explain the meaning of the word Radha. The word Radha comes from the root word Radh, which means to worship. It also means to grow, to prosper, to flourish, to accomplish. Putting these two words together, putting these two meanings together, it will then emerge that the meaning of the word Radha means who has accomplished the perfect and perfected the goal of her life just by spontaneously worshipping the Lord, by bonding with Him. Actually, Radha is a short form of Radhika, which again is a short form of the word Aradhika. Samantat aradhayati iti Aradhika. Someone who worships him totally, fully involved in every which way. That is Aradhika, and it's further shortened to Radhika. Now they say dhara means a flow of water from a higher level to a lower level, which is the usual flow. But Radha is one who has beaten that flow. She has swum against the tide to unite with the source, which is so difficult. How much of courage it takes, how much of consistency it takes, how much of tenacity it takes, and how much of penance it takes to flow upward, to flow against the normal course. And she's a force which reached the source. And she's also the foremost of the Gopis, I said. The very word gopi comes from the word go, is made up of the two letters go and p. The word go has many meanings in Sanskrit. It means cattle, it means earth, it means senses, it means the Vedas. It has 4 meanings. I repeat: cattle, senses, Vedas, and Mother Earth. Radha, in the context of the gopis, go means senses. And piba means to drink. Sarvaihi angaihi ya Krishna ratham pibati sa gopi. One who drinks in Krishna rasa with all her senses is a gopi. So she is the foremost of the gopis as well. And how did she become is Ahladini Shakti, his prana Shakti. There's a story here. Radha's grandmother, Dadi, is symbolic of anyone who doubts a devotion, who tries to discourage us and say that, what you're doing is something foolish, it doesn't exist, etc., etc. She couldn't stand the sight of Krishna. She considered him a playboy and a thief to boot. Full stop, period. And she always discouraged Radha's friendship with Krishna. And especially when she came of age, she said, nobody will marry you if you associate with him. But Radha was so helpless in her love of Krishna. And I told you she's very soft-hearted. She could never say no to Krishna when he called her. So one day, her grandmother, her Dadi, created a scene. Even now in Barsana, there is that Haveli where they all lived. Okay, and so she says, you're not going anywhere near him. And, Krishna says one last time. And so Radha goes. Okay, and so when Radha goes that day, she's very rooty. Matlab she's keeping very aloof. She's very, she's very distant from him. And this, Krishna is not comfortable with this because he's used to her. Gopis, we must remember, they had a very informal relationship with Krishna. But it wasn't in any way irreverent. They were informal, yes, but it was also very intimate. It was informal by virtue of its intimacy and intensity. But that doesn't mean they took Krishna for granted in any way. They could say anything to him, and he could say anything to them. But that doesn't mean there was love lacking, because it was very, very pure. It was intense. It was very involved. It was very intimate. And so was it with Radha. He says, why are you doing this to me today? She's very straight, frank, upward, not like him. He can come up with all kinds of excuses, ploys, games, whatever. He can feel one thing and say another. Somebody asked, why is Krishna standing teda? That means he's always teda. Puja Guruji said, no. He's having one foot properly placed. That means he's Siddha with Siddha people. And he's Teda with Teda people. So Radha says, Radha cannot hide the reason. She says, I'm torn between my grandmother and you. She loves me. She wants my greatest good. But she says, the only way to get there is to be away from you. And you tell me that you love me, but many times I see that you're taking me for granted. And Krishna doesn't say anything. With her, he was very, very subtle. So and then from his Angavastra, he opens a couple of bracelets. They're very exquisite, unearthly bracelets. And so he says, thanks that I had to hear this today, because whole of last night, I kept, I made these I crafted them with my own hands. He's Sakala Kalavallavan. He's good at, Guruji, when he explained Bhagavatam in Pavai recently, he said that Krishna had mastered 66 arts, including embroidery, stitching, mimicry, drama, dance, music, and cookery, what have you. So, it melts a heart. And then he says, I thought I would put it on your wrist. So she very gingerly extends her palms and she says, okay, you can. So he does that. And she goes home. She's absolutely on cloud nine that he's made her feel so special. He stayed up the whole night crafting those golden bracelets. And her grandmother, she's one up on everybody. When she left home, she had told her to count her accessory items, her jewelry. So she had counted. And when she reached home, her grandmother asked her about her tryst with Krishna. So Radha innocently says that, I try to keep my distance and all that, but I think, Dadi, you're unnecessarily suspicious. And see, he's given me this bracelet expressing his exquisite love for me and all of that. So this Dadi, very practical, huh? Very, very worldly wise. She says, first count the number of ornaments you've come back with. And Radha has no doubt, so she counts, but there's one missing. Can any of you guess, if those of you who know, don't say it, but any of you guess as to which ornament of Radha he had stolen? Because all he had touched that evening was slipped the bracelet through her wrist. So what could he have stolen? Huh? Well, Kankana is what? Bangle, no. Yeah, her earring. Her fingering. So she's very, very mad with him. And she says, you're always, running me down and embarrassing me like this. I'll have to put you in your place. And so she bides her time. She doesn't do it immediately. But one fine day, she steals his flute. And it is closer to the time when Krishna is about to leave Vrindavan. And Krishna confesses, just before leaving, that a woman who stole my flute cannot be an ordinary woman, because my flute is my breath. You play the flute with your breath, right? So he says, this flute, when you got it, it means you took charge of my breath. Nobody can exist without the breath. Without the breath, there's no heartbeat. There's nothing. A person is lifeless without prana. So she is the life force of Krishna, and that is why she's called Praneshwari. And also, she is the Ahalladini Shakti. Ahalladini Shakti doesn't mean cheap pleasure potency. It means that she empowers him to be at his best everywhere. In the prison, in the palace, on the battlefield. She enlivens him, as it were. And so when he's leaving Vrindavan, he says, this flute is yours forever. That means I'm leaving my prana with you. And it's very poignant for me when I visit Vrindavan, because she held fort there. She didn't run behind him when he left Vrindavan. And her sacrifice, her surrender, her selfless love, we don't get to hear so much of that. Only in Vrindavan, on every tree, every bark, every hall, every wall, every house, every parlor, every clinic, you see Radha Radha everywhere. They say Radhe Radhe bolo, Vrindavan mein dolo, man ki gatri kolo. Say Radhe Radhe, then Vrindavan, sway in Vrindavan and unburden your heart. Radha Radha ratatahi sab vyadha mit jaye. The trees, they're people, they're pastoral. Krishna is a pastoral hero. Pastoral is one who is, very, very close to nature. One who looks upon nature as God. He's a pastoral hero, very fond of animals, rivers, nature. He couldn't bear to see Yamuna being poisoned. He eliminated the forest fire. And then they say, one thing which I love this, they say, Radha tu badi bhagini, kon tapasya keen, teen lok ke taran taran sohe tere adhin. You are the most fortunate one. What tapas did you do that the Lord of the three worlds is your slave? And I wrote something when I visited Vrindavan. Kanha's penchant for mischief led him to play many pranks on Yamuna's banks. Kanha's penchant for mischief led him to play many pranks on Yamuna's banks, but that twilight saw him a tad sober. The natural lover that he was, he took in Radha with all his senses. She, seated on a lotus bed, her sole focus was their separation ahead. He says, Radha, many may find you a figment of their imagination, but I know that couched in your ravishing frame is a woman of immense intuition. Long before Vrindavan knew it, you sat right here and hit that verbal arrow at me. You said, Kanha, not many a tomorrow lies between us. My sorrow is too deep for tears. In penance here shall I live all my years. Radha, mine is a twisted fate that won't see you as my life mate. Often you say that I'm your lifeline. But today, I swear, I confess that you're my life breath. She's his Praneshwari. My inspiration to love and live beyond life and death. Here, with the trees, the rocks, and the holy Yamuna as witness. Here, my goddess, I lay my breath, my flute at your feet. When I am gone, you will not be begone. Your music will immortalize our love and breathe life into the beaten hearts of man, woman, plant, peacock, and cow. The power of love that you wield, will yield solace to any heart that bleeds. Then, holding just her finger, his eyes lingered on hers. The twin lamps of Shakti and Bhakti. A hush descended on the whole scene. Nature was stumped and stupefied by what it had seen. Nature was stunned and stupefied by what it had seen. And so, after all this has happened in Vrindavan, it amuses me when people say that Radha is not real. She's just a figment of his imagination. Even in the Bhagavata, there is proof. Anaya aradita nunam bhagavan haririshvaraha yanno vihaya govinda pritaha, etc., etc. You know what etc., etc. means. In the 10th canto, the 30th chapter, I just chanted the 28th verse, where the Gopis, see, they are not jealous. They do recognize that she is very superior to them by virtue of her devotion, her commitment and her sacrifice. And they say, listen, Krishna has left all of us and he has taken her alone to a sacred lonely spot. That means that she is really, really worthy of it. And in Vrindavan, you had it. If you say that Radha was not married to Krishna, one of my friends said it and she had it. This man whom she told it to, he's just a Vrindavan Vasi, but he took offense to that and he said, tomorrow you're going to meet me here. She says, at what time? He says, at 5 a.m. in the morning. And she says, no, he says, then I will come to the ashram where you're staying and pick you. And this really happened. And he goes to the ashram and he picks her and then he takes her to the spot called Bhandira Kavana. Okay? And then he says, this is the spot where Lord Krishna wed Radha. And then she says, Brahmaji officiated as the priest. For all the wrongs that he had done to Krishna, he officiated as the priest. And the witnesses, because it was a sudden marriage, they couldn't organize fire and havan and everything. And the witnesses were a cow, because Krishna held cows very sacred, and a virgin girl, a Kanika girl. So in Vrindavan, Krishna is married to Radha. And people of Barsana, Radha's home place, and Raval, when they visit Vrindavan, they don't even drink a drop of water. And the journey takes days. Because they say, हम राधा की पियर से आए हैं, हम यहाँ से कुछ हम दे के जाएंगे, लेके नहीं जाएंगे. To this day, when Barsana Vasis visit Vrindavan, they don't take even a drop of water. That is their honor to the bride that they have gifted to this, to Lord Krishna here. Another proof for Radha in the Bhagavad is, see, Lord Shukadev, he considered Radha his Gupta Guru. Of course, Veda Vyasji was his Guru, but when it came to Krishna Bhakti, Radha was his Guru. So when he is narrating the Bhagavatam to Parikshit, he would often go into Bhava Samadhi. And so he avoided mention of the word Radha, because he knew if he said Radha, he couldn't speak any further. And the text had to continue for Parikshit. So he avoids mentioning the word Radha and he says, Yaya Aradita Nunam. In one place when the Brahmara Gita comes, that, everywhere else it is said, Gopyaha Uchuhu. But when the Brahmara Gita is being sung, it is said Gopi Uvacha, because she alone could take on Uddhav and tell and say, go and. But even otherwise, I'm just quoting a little, see how the Gopis talk to Uddhav. Uddhav is a Jnani Bhakta. But he was very overwhelmed by the Gopis' affection, by their rapport, by their bravery in front of Lord Krishna. See what they tell him. They say that you have come to tell us that Krishna is missing us. We know all about it. And this is what they say. A courtesan abandons an impoverished client. The subjects desert a king who is too weak to protect them. A student leaves his teacher when he has finished his education. The sacrificial priests give up the master of sacrifices once they have received their dakshina. The birds leave a tree when it has exhausted its fruits. A guest quits a house when he has finished his meal. Animals get away from a forest when it's on fire. And a parama deserts a lovelorn woman when he has finished enjoying her. Would anyone who hasn't expressed oneness with the Lord dare to speak to the Lord like this? It's impossible. So the Gopis were on another level altogether with Lord Krishna. And then, conveying Krishna's message to the Gopis, Uddhav breaks into tears here because he says, devotion to Krishna is usually attained by the practice of several pious disciplines like gifts, vows, austerity, sacrifices, repetition of the divine names. But lo, even without any of these, he says, Bhavat Yuttama Shloke, Bhavatir Abhiranuttama, and he calls them Muninam Api Durlabha. Their devotion, he says, is unavailable even to saints. Munina Manana Shila Munina. So he says, even without any of these, I find in you an extraordinary and unparalleled manifestation of this love of the Most Holy One, Sri Krishna, which is rare even among sages. We must all know, the legend goes that in Ramavatar, when Rama went into the forest along with Vishwamitra, the rishis, even very steady ones, were very distracted for some reason. And when they opened their eyes, they found this very, very handsome, peerless, unmatchable form in front of them, Sri Rama. They wanted to hold him, hug him, touch him, etc. And then Sri Rama stops them and says that in this form, as Rama, I am a Maryada Purush. I have to maintain Ekapatni Vrata. But as Krishna, I will come and I will sport with you very intimately and, unabashedly, ecstatically, with no holds barred. And that is how these munis were born as gopis. Now coming to how Radha came into my life. In 2010, I took a sabbatical and went home. I wanted to be with my old parents who are very staunch Vaishnavas and great devotees of the Lord. And they never questioned me. When I said I'll enter Chinmaya Mission, they never stopped me. They let me follow my heart and come in. So I thought I had to do something for them before they passed on, and I went home. But a very hurricane-like premenopausal phase hit me. And so one day I stood before Krishna and said that, hey, listen, you don't have a woman's body and mind, so I don't think you'll ever understand this tumultuous uproar of emotions within me. I am going to leave you and go to Radha. And as instantly it happened, the transition was so smooth, and my mind attained so much of solace and quietude. That is how Radha came into my life. Otherwise, I thought she was a weepy willow and that she was not a woman of substance. But even now, I wouldn't restrict her to a woman, a form at all. She's an energy, a presence, a fragrance of love, always there for the seeker. Arad also means to yearn and to crave. So in Bed Dwarka, there is this temple of Radha. In Vrindavan, there is this Bansi Chori Radhima. She's holding her flute, and he has crowned her with his crown, saying, a woman who is my prana can't be ordinary. So she's called Vrindavaneshwari. She's called Bansi Chori Radhima. That is the form of Radha that grips me. A very, very tiny temple, but very, very powerful and live. So in Bed Dwarka, which is, Dwarka is submerged under the sea. Once I went to Bed Dwarka there a few years ago, and it was closing time. All the temple doors were shutting one after another. I thought this is so inauspicious. I've come all the way and they're shutting. And then Krishna's shut first, Dwarkadish. I told him, it's very predictable that you do this to me. It's okay. And then I went round all the temples, one is, there is Rukmini, there's Lakshmi temple, there is Satyabhama, there's so many temples. And everyone closed one after another. I came to a very small temple again. And I don't know who is inside, but I told this lady who was with me, Anupama is here, that lady who played the host in Smita in Jamnagar. I told her, I'm not budging from this temple till the door is open. And she says, for all you know, it may be closed. How can you say that? I said, no, but I somehow feel that he's going to open the door, and I stood there. And she said, Amma, the jetty, you take a jetty from Dwarka. She said, it's going to, I said, I don't care, but I'm not going to budge. And when he opened, it was a Radha temple. And Radha temple, she had just finished her meals, and there was a pan that was offered to her. He calls me in as if, I'm her long lost friend, and as if she's waiting for me. And I'm so dazed because it was a double joy for me. I honestly didn't know it was a Radha temple. And he gives me the pan and the tirtha from her. So there she's standing as a sadhika. She's having a kamandalu in one hand and a japamala in the other. Okay? So she's always, always a sadhika's guide, a sentinel of light. And that is how she's very relevant in our lives. Because we are all seekers. And as seekers, how many times do we flounder, stumble, bumble, mumble? And there she comes in, very silently, as a Saka who left. At 1, I woke up yesterday, I thought I had to sleep early, get up early. I slept at 11, which is not my time at all. I woke up at 1 and I was away, and I wrote this poem. I scribbled it mentally. Only now, after the Bhagavata is over, I put it on paper, saying I may miss a few lines. At 1:30, I composed this, and this kept me awake till 4 because, the whole experience kind of wouldn't let me sleep. So I'm going to recite that now. Radha, I found you in a small shrine, gesturing to me that I am thine. I find you in the street, in the sweltering heat, as a stranger offering me prasad to eat. It was a stranger who gave me some prasad, when I was wandering in Vrindavan. I find you in the flower seller's voice, in the by-lane's noise, and occasionally in my inner poise. Radha, how magnanimous of you to consider my smile, my tear, a glimpse, a glance, a word, a shout, as a devotional trance. Yes, I found you, but only after you found me, owned me, and drowned me in the consciousness of love sublime. You, a veritable volcanic spirit of love and light, though downgraded many a time to a mere romantic woman, you give so freely of your love to cow, calf, plants, animals, humans, and how. You are my soul's succor, Succour, succor means strength. You are my soul's succor, my soul anchor. You feel, you heal, you steal my heart only to reveal gospel truths that soothe. I hope I've done some justice to Radha, and I bow down to the devotee in all of you, and please bless me to further my journey with her. Thank you.